Before we get started, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Taylor May. Taylor joined the Urban Alliance staff in 2021 as a program coordinator. But one of the many things I love about Taylor is that Taylor is actually an alum of Urban Alliance. Taylor finished Urban Alliance back in 2015. Before joining Urban Alliance, Taylor worked at Integrity Educational Services in Michigan as a teacher, coach, career advisor, and behavior interventionist. Please join me in welcoming Taylor May.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you all today. And before I introduce our student moderator for the day, I want to share a few important housekeeping items. First, we are recording today's event and it will be posted on our YouTube channel tomorrow. Please be sure to always keep your sound on mute. I want to ask that you please put your name and region on your Zoom, whether that be Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, or the greater DC region. I also want to ask our guests to do the same. To our student interns, I ask you to please stay on camera throughout the entirety of the event. And if you haven't done so yet, please give us your answer to the question in the chat, who is your favorite NBA team? I want to thank you all again for being here today, and I would like to introduce our student moderator, Kayla Washington. I've had the pleasure to be Kayla's program coordinator this year. Kayla also attends the same high school I attended when I was in the Urban Alliance program. Kayla is a senior attending Kenwood Academy High School in Chicago. Through Urban Alliance, Kayla's internship is at the nonprofit organization, Business Leadership Council. And welcome to Kayla's mentor, Corey Thames, who is joining us in the audience today. Kayla is active in her school community academically, but socially as well. She believes in giving back to her community and does so as a tutor for freshmen and sophomores, and as a leader in peer mentorship groups for women and girls. Kayla is also the captain of Kenwood's volleyball team. Kayla hopes to attend the University of Southern California or Georgia State University to major in neuroscience. Please welcome Kayla Washington.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that warm welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. I am very excited to be today's moderator for the Leader Like Me series. I am delighted to introduce our guest, Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor is the Executive Director of the NBA Foundation. The NBA Foundation is a nonprofit organization established and initially funded by all 30 NBA teams. He is responsible for strategic development, creation, and implementation of programs and partnerships that advance the foundation's efforts to increase access and support for high school, college-age, job-ready, and mid-career Black men and women. He previously served as Senior Vice President of Player Development for the NBA, leading initiatives to assist players in their personal, professional, and social development. A native of New York City, he graduated with honors from Hunter College of the City University of New York and earned a law degree from Indiana University, Bloomington School of Law. Everyone, welcome Greg Taylor. Okay, thank you for being with us. Are you ready? We can get started right now.
Absolutely, it's great to be here. I appreciate the time, you guys.
Okay. So first off, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up, your education and career journey, and your history with Urban Alliance?
Yeah, before I do that, let me just thank all the young people for being here. I was scrolling through the screens and I see your beautiful faces, and I know you could be anywhere. And so one of the greatest things you're doing, even at this moment, is choosing to be amongst your peers that really want to do better in their lives, to grow, go places, they have ambition. And so just being here, I think, is an act of leadership. So first and foremost, I'm here because of that. So it's cool to see you all. And I'm hoping we can kind of have a conversation back and forth when we get there. So a way to introduce myself. So my dad, double war veteran. He was in both the Korean and World War II. And my mom is a university professor, particularly Black women, 20th century Black women writers. And so I was raised in a household where service and education ran through everything that we did or talked about. As was mentioned, I grew up in New York City, although I did my high school years in Oakland, California, when my mom was teaching out west. And then ultimately, I think if you think about my career, and hopefully we'll get into it, the common thread is a fundamental commitment to young people, from all walks of life. Even now, as I worked with NBA ball players, they are young people. They just happen to be really tall and good at hoop, but still young people. So I'm really interested in that. And I came to the NBA really to help lead, prior to the foundation, the NBA's player development office, which was essentially the Urban Alliance for basketball players. It was literally the programs in place to help educate the basketball players on how best to take advantage of this amazing opportunity to play in the league. So manage your money, social media, mental health and wellness, healthy relationships, all of those youth development programs, decision-making, time management, all the things that I know Urban Alliance is committed to. We just had a dedicated office or department at the league committed to that for ball players. And so in many ways, that's how I landed here about 9 years ago. And it's been a labor of love. We are a hard driving company, but it's been fun to find that intersection between my love of sport, my love of young people, and my love of education. And I think that's who I am and what I do.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. So how did your law degree and undergrad degree from Hunter College prepare you for your role at the NBA Foundation?
So interesting. I mean, that's a good question. I actually went to law school. I actually originally wanted to be a judge. I don't know if you remember in the late early 90s, I guess, the Central Park Five, right? Those are the young people that were accused of a violent act against a jogger in New York City that sparked this whole notion that young people were these wild, uncontrollable packs in the city of New York and other places. But one of those young people was Yusef Salaam. And Yusef Salaam actually grew up in my art program. And so I knew him as a young person who liked to draw, a young person who was really active in his community. Wrong place, wrong time, certainly later exonerated of all of the charges, having spent an inordinate amount of time in jail. So I went to law school to be a judge. I thought to provide a level of justice from my lived experience for people I cared about was what I wanted to do. I think along the way, lots of other opportunities, obviously didn't end up being a judge, but lots of other opportunities. And I think the beauty of having an advanced degree like a law degree and others is that it really just teaches you to read, write, and think. And I would say to you, I apply that every day in my career in big or small ways. I think in many ways, the law degree and my undergrad degree helps folk who were making the decision as to whether or not to bring me aboard, showed that I could commit to something, that I had a little bit of smarts in my head and that I knew kind of how to lead and move forward. And so I think that formal education was really important. But I promise you, day in and day out, I see some of our staff members on, I use those youth development principles that I promise you Urbo is pouring into you each and every day in terms of my work. How do you inspire other people to bring their full selves to the work? How do you share your lived experience in an open and honest way? How do you meet people where they are? All of those principles, I think, are really important. And so I think it's both the combination of my formal education, my lived experience, and my time in organizations like an Urban Alliance that really have gotten me to this place today. And I promise you, I rely on those skills and those experiences every day, every decision, every communication that I have.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. You are completely right. Those foundational skills are something that we really need to have. So what are some critical skills, characteristics, and experience that one must have to advance in their career and into a position such as yours?
A couple of things. I mean, it's easy to say, you got to be able to read, write, and think. And I would say to you, people who know me, I'm kind of painfully blunt. So let's go there for a minute. I would argue that folks who are in decision-making positions don't often look like those of us who are on the screen, right? And what happens is, it's not whether people are good or bad. It just is their perspective is, you hire in your own image. You hire what's familiar. You hire in the manner in which you have been successful, right? And so one of the huge unwritten rules that folk from our communities have to just accept and navigate is you have to be able to read, write, and express yourself, because the assumption is you will not be able to, at least at a way that is marketable or a way that can undergird your employment or your leadership in whatever space you try to be. So I often tell people the price of admission is being able to read, write, and think. And that doesn't mean you don't code switch when you're hanging with your boys or your girl. That doesn't mean it just means you understand how to present and communicate yourself, your thoughts and your ideas really clearly. I would just want to be really clear about that. And then I think the second skill set that makes a lot of sense to me is this notion of you have to be honest about what it is that you do well and what it is that are your weak spots, right? And I think in the position that I have been in of leadership, I've always been very clear and confident about what I know and do well, but I'm also not afraid to hire folk and work with folks who are smarter than me on issues that I don't know things about. There's a joke that says A's hire B's and B's hire C's, meaning really great leaders want to hire somebody who's just a little bit below them, so they're never really going to threaten them. I think confident leaders, A's hire A's, right? And I'm hoping that in many ways, leaders on my team will eclipse me at some point. In fact, we've talked about it. And so I would argue that the thing that really will distinguish you as you pursue careers like mine and others, be confident what you know, be even more confident about what you don't know, and hire folk and build teams and form alliances with folk that can help complement what you need in order to be the leader that you are. It has served me very, very well. And even though it sounds counterintuitive, the ultimate example of power and esteem and confidence is being honest about what you don't know. And I think in many ways, if you can build and operate that way, you'll be in a really good position moving forward.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Well, there have been many media stories about the disparities and inequities in the sports industry, from the lack of minority owners and female athletes, or women's championship sports teams not being paid at the same level as their male their male counterparts. What needs to happen in the industry to address these disparities and inequities to create real change?
Yeah, again, so, we're unapologetically a business. The NBA is a business, right? And so in many ways, the amazing gifts you see from the players who are on the court is a part of that. I would say it's the main thing in terms of our business, but recognize there's all types of other jobs, creative, technology, finance, legal. You could go on and on down the list in terms of what it takes to put on the show you see on the court. And in many ways, it's the bottom line is it's about revenue, right? I mean, again, I said I'd be blunt and honest in these conversations. And the bottom line is when you look at the disparities between the WNBA and the NBA, when you look at the disparities between who owns teams and who doesn't, it boils down to revenue and finance. I'm not apologizing for that, nor am I suggesting that's the only reason, but it is a driver as to why you see the disparities that you do. It's why you see who the folks are who own the teams and who don't. It's why you see the disparity between WNBA salaries, with the max is about $225,000 a year, and on the NBA side, I don't know, the max is, I think we're at 41 million, right? That disparity is driven by revenue. And so I think that's the core issue here. I will say though, in order to kind of start to chip away at those disparities, it can't be because it's a charitable act. It can't be because we think it's the right thing to do. It has to be driven in many ways by a business imperative. Folks aren't going to give away revenue. The New York Knicks are worth over $5 billion. That's with a B, y'all. And so to me, like I want to be really clear about that. But I do think things can be done to move in the right direction. I think to really broaden folks' understanding about those disparities. I think we have to broaden who are eligible owners, if you will, of teams. Like, how do you broaden and diversify the ownership set in terms of who actually owns those NBA teams? And so I know there's investment groups and combinations of folks coming together to try to break into the ownership ranks. Compared to other professional leagues, the NBA is actually more progressive on this point, though a long way to go. And I think leadership at the league would be honest about that. I think we've got to change the mental model about who are owners and who are governors and who are leaders in this space. And I think there's work to be done. And on the W side, I have to be really clear from where the WNBA has been to where it is now under the leadership of a colleague of mine, Kathy Engelhart, it has doubled and tripled in terms of its size and impact. So it's on the right trajectory. But I want to be clear that the disparities are really driven by revenue. And until we can find ways to find more parallels, if you, around the revenue that's raised, the disparities are going to exist. And I think that's just a frank way to answer that question, though we need to work on broadening mental models and frames of who leads, who's included, why inclusion matters. It can't be because we think it's the right thing to do. It has to be driven by a business imperative. And I know many folks are hard at work trying to figure that out.
All right, thank you so much for your transparency. That is truly appreciated. Well, speaking of leadership, a leadership position comes with many achievements as well as challenges and tough decisions to make along the way. How do you navigate through your decision-making, cope during challenging times, and stay motivated?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think the challenging part on the tough decision piece, you got to be really clear, like a real lesson for me, and I've learned this the hard way early in my career, is just don't wing it. You can't just wing it. There's a time in my career where actually running a nonprofit in DC back in the day where I didn't fully prepare myself for a major decision I had to make, particularly around fundraising. Hired some folk, and because I wasn't prepared as to what it took to actually close the deal, I had folks who were relying on me for their bi-monthly paychecks, and I wasn't able to pay them. And so that now you're impacting the lives of those staff members, their children, and all because I tried to wing that, oh, I thought I could get this or that done. And so what's really, really, really clear is you can't wing it. I think when you have tough decisions, as I said earlier, I think you got to be honest about what you know and what you don't know. I think one of the things that happens as you go higher and higher in terms of maybe the professional hierarchy or the professional career is the higher you get to like executive level leadership. I think one of the truisms is you don't have to have the answer, but you certainly have to know how to get the answer, right? And I think the distinction there is folks think you have to know everything versus no, you want to put together a networks of folk. You want to have honest partnerships. You want to have people who agree with you and disagree with you. And it is in that network, in that debate, that collaboration, that the best thinking comes out. I think someone says, I think it's the collective wisdom beats the lone genius, right? The collective group is better than trying to go with it by yourself. And so to me, I live that now. I think I try to make sure that I surround myself with folks who are really incredible leaders in their own lives. I think folks who have had a good and great track record in their own professional life. I'm the type of leader where I expect you to speak truth to power. And so, my door is open. I'm warm and fuzzy. Like we have good relationships, but I also want you to bring it. And sometimes the downside of that is folks want the leader to make the decision because in many ways that absolves them of having to play a real role. And sometimes you got to make the call. Like you can't just keep debating. Like you get it. That's why you're in that seat. But I think the process is about making sure you're gathering as many perspectives as you can. Because the funny thing that happens as you get to those executive level or leading decisions is it's oftentimes the better choice of two poor options, right? It's like, it's not always right or wrong. It's often lots of gray areas, right? And you got to manage risk and the like. And so I think the way I handle those tough decisions really is about making sure that I have people around me that I know speak truth, that have a really broad perspective about what we're trying to do, and to really be thoughtful about making that call. Even if I know I'm taking a risk, if my process is straight, then I feel okay to stand tall, whether that risk is right or wrong. And trust me, every day I'm making the wrong decision with some of the information or the things that I'm faced with, but I trust my process to get there and trust that because we're on the right side of what we're trying to do, that we'll end up making good choices and leading this thing in the right way possible. But there's no roadmap to what we're doing. But if you have a process and good people, I think you can get there.
Yeah, something my grandma always says, it's not always about the end point, but the journey is what makes it count.
Absolutely, Chris. Listen to grandma. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So what would you say is the toughest lesson you've had to learn in your career, and how did you handle it?
Yeah, I mean, again, lots of lessons. Again, I already shared, not, don't wing it. I think that's one. I think one of the real, the other tougher issues was, I think you've got to be clear about your experience set. All of you, again, I don't know you obviously personally, but I think if you're in Urban Alliance, you're on your way to being viewed as a really bright, promising young person. I tell you, y'all look good. So if you look good, you act good, you feel good, you are good. Let's go. Right. And so I think in many ways, what happens is it gets you into rooms and into opportunities that you may or may not be prepared for, to be honest, because people are betting on potential or betting on how you've presented yourself or whatever. And so I think some of those tough lessons, again, is to be honest about what you do and don't know. It doesn't mean that you haven't earned those rooms that you're entering into, but the way you lead and excel once you're in those rooms is to be honest about what the deal is and where you're going. I think a real story on that line for me, I used to run Mark Zuckerberg's foundation in Newark, New Jersey, called the Foundation for Newark's Future. And I was coming in as this kind of educational expert and hired to help do a number of things on the ground, and felt I knew better than the community because I, quote unquote, was the expert, right? And so while I may have had national knowledge and certainly had my time, we used to run a nonprofit in DC and other places, certainly knowledgeable, I didn't know the context within the Newark community that where we were working. And you've got to understand what's going on, like the history of the riots of 1968. If you've ever been to Newark, that South Ward, the buildings are still burnt out to this day, right? Or the disparity between Black folk in some of the South Ward and police, that those hurt feelings and that hurt exchange still exists today. The Newark public school system is the largest employer in the state. Didn't know. So coming in, really tough lessons as to how we were going to try to execute my mandate, which was to try to improve educational outcomes in that context. I don't think I either respected or fully understood what that community perspective, role, history played in the influence of that. And we made a lot of mistakes. That was probably the toughest point in my career, lowest point for me, because leadership is lonely, right? And so when you're the point person, and even though I talked about collaboration, whatever, the last step you make alone, you've got to stand firm in what you believe and who you are. And at those times, it's tough, no question. I'll be honest with you, a really tough time. And I know that their mentors and others poured into me and helped me get through it, but probably the lowest time in my career, but certainly pause to learn and to grow, and to really kind of reach back out to those folks that I didn't take time to learn from initially, to circle back around and to kind of make myself whole. At that point, the work was done. And to this day, I'm close to all of, in fact, I'm on a board in Newark for that very reason, to stay committed to the legacy of that work and that community.
Oh, wow. Thank you. With all of your learning experiences, what do you wish you had known starting out with your career? So what would you tell your younger self?
I think I would tell myself to balance ambition and patience. Right. I think when I was younger, I was ambitious, y'all, for real. Like, let's be clear. Like, if people who know me, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm hoping all of you are ambitious. And you wouldn't be here if you weren't. That's my opening about thanking you for your time and the act of leadership, just simply showing up. I'm hoping when I shut up talking, you guys will have questions, which is even another way to demonstrate leadership. But I feel when I was younger, I was really driven by the goals I had set for myself, where I wanted to be, the people who I admired that I wanted to be like. And I think there was an angst, if you will, kind of I would say probably a negative energy, that I was so worried and desperate to try to get there, that I feel like if I could tell my younger self to like have patience, meaning meet with other folks, learn other people's lived experience, sit at the feet of elders and just learn, like respect people's journeys and the decisions that they've made. I think that balance would be really important. I'm not suggesting don't be ambitious, Because I think if you're ambitious plus really hard work, actually, you can bend the fate of future in your way. I really do believe that. I really do. I think the future bends towards those that work hard and really grind. But I think life is about deposits and withdrawals, right? You can't just always take, and not give. And I think if you have to balance, if I had to tell my younger self that, really respecting early relationships, professional and otherwise, I think recognizing that sometimes, even though my day I wanted to do X, Y, and Z, but sitting with someone was going to take longer than I thought, but just to hear and learn their shared experience would be helpful. There's amazing stories where when I've gotten to certain people, certain levels, folks that I had crossed paths with historically saying to me, like, I remember when we had this conversation. I remember when you shared that note, or you took time to have, and then you don't realize that as you're working towards it. So I would tell my younger self to balance ambition with patience as you generate through your life. I think that's really important.
Yeah, like someone in the chat said, patience is definitely key.
Yeah.
So did you have role models or mentors while in high school or college? If so, how did they impact your personal or professional life?
Yeah, no, I tell people all the time, I've had incredible mentors, and I still to this day, it's funny because I tell people it's like I had ordinary people who ended up doing extraordinary things, but I just knew them when they were ordinary people, right? You know what I'm saying? Like before folks blew up, they really took a real interest in me. And so I think, they've helped me all along the way. They told me straight. I had an incredible teacher in my elementary school who, I still remember Joan Grimm, who told me I was underachieving and wouldn't take it. And I thought she was the meanest thing going. But to this day, she's my favorite teacher because I understood what expectations were. I had, mentors who opened doors. I was like, and maybe some of you on this phone, maybe all of you on this Zoom, but I was like the professional young person, right? When the organization wants a young person to come and like share their experience, and you're able to kind of articulate what it's like on the block as well as who you are. Like I was that young person, and I realized that was like public speaking. And I realized it was like understanding, in our case, we would testify in Albany about youth services. I grew up in New York, like understanding how the wheels of change happen and all of a role. And so those mentors opened those doors. They had incredibly high expectations of me, and they let me know early on that I was contributing to a legacy that was much larger than myself. And I think it's why that intersection of service and education I opened up with is a theme that is consistent in my life, because they really were incredible. I would say one of the things that continues to distinguish those mentors that are influential in my life is they also allowed me to grow up. Like what happens oftentimes with mentors is they meet you when you're 16 and you are forever 16 to them, right? But a really great mentor allows you to grow. They're still tough on you. They still remember you win. They still will give you the business if you mess it up, but they allow you to really become and grow. And I think that's really, really important. I'm getting a note about the recording, but that will really, I think that's really important. And so those mentors that have been with me over time, probably 25, 30 years of my life, I'm still in touch with the same group.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah. So to wrap up our Urban Alliance internship experience, we will have an end of the year project to practice our interviewing and communication skills. Like you said, you have been interviewed many times and have spoken in front of thousands of people throughout your career. What tips can you share to help us become more confident in speaking in whatever else we do?
Yeah, a couple of rules I'd say. I think you got to be clear on how to introduce yourself. Like we don't spend enough time understanding how to introduce yourself, and it needs to be quick and hard hitting. And I think frame who you are. So me open up, son of a double war veteran, mom, a pre-university professor. Like that's not fake or made up. Like I've spent time thinking about it. So I think first and foremost, people call it elevator speeches and what all of that stuff is okay, but understand how to seize control of that initial way in which you introduce and present yourself, and really spend time with it. Like be able to kind of make it thoughtful. I want you to be clear what you believe in. right? Because when you are speaking publicly, no matter what it is you're talking about, like even today, you won't remember what I've said, maybe a couple things here and there, but you'll hopefully remember the candor with which I'm speaking. You'll hopefully remember the degree to which I'm familiar with many of, who you guys are and what your organization is. And I think that's really important, to be really clear about what you believe. And I think you do want to be able to weave your knowledge through whatever whatever you're speaking on. Practice, practice, practice. I mean, I think the bottom line is, you want to be able to be clear. You want to be the expert of you, and you want to then add the expert of you to whatever is the content you're talking about. And I would argue the expert of you should already know. Right? You actually already do know it. The question is, can you articulate it in a way that's compelling and interesting and like open-ended, so you can kind of set the tone in the conversation? You can see I'm a painfully shy guy. No, I'm just kidding. Like I'm comfortable talking because I've done this before. And then you got to think about that, right? And then whatever your content is or your specific knowledge is that you have to share, or whatever the topic is, you got to know your stuff, right? And so it doesn't mean you're not going to be nervous coming in. Ironically, I mean, we're all relatively young here. I'm not sure folks' ages, but I prepared for this as if I was talking for the Board of Governors. Like I've looked at the questions in my mind. I've thought what I wanted to say. What's the feeling that I wanted to communicate to you all? How did I want to show up today? It's the same thing I do. I don't care if I'm talking to 6-year-olds or my governors. Like I do the same thing in terms of preparation, and it's not made up or winged. And so my advice for you is it's okay to be nervous. It really is. For me, that moment when I shift from being nervous to confident is when I can hear in my own head, while I'm giving my speech or talking, thoughts about what I want to say to bring my points closer to home, right? That's when I know I've mastered the room. Whether you all appreciate or like what I'm saying or not doesn't really matter. At that point, I know I'm on my game. But before I'm in there, I'm worried about the crowd. I'm worried about this person. Do I know? Like I'm nervous. It's just a matter of having a process moving forward. And I would say to you, what gets you to that point of hearing your own voice is being able to confidently introduce yourself to the room. No matter what you speak, wherever you speak, no matter where, like you have to open up and say who you are, right? Do that in a way that I think is thoughtful and compelling and interesting. And I think you're off on a good step moving forward. But those are rules I use today in terms of public speaking.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Not going to lie, I was a little nervous too, but
Sure. That's why I teased you yesterday. I was like, you know what you're doing? No, I'm kidding.
Okay, so me and my Urban Alliance peers are about to graduate from high school. Some of us will go to college, into the workforce, or continue our career training. What advice do you have for us as we start this new exciting phase of our lives?
Y'all gonna hate me at this one. So get off your phones, like straight up, like put the phone down. Like this notion of like everybody on Instagram and Facebook, all of that is made up. Everybody fronting. Like it's just like, and I think what happens is it creates this anxiety in you all in this generation where you think you have to be doing that, even though that is not real, right? And I think my biggest advice for you is to get out in your communities. My biggest advice to you is get lost in a city. My biggest advice for you is it's okay not to know, right? If you have a process in place, you outwork your competition and you're clear who you are, it's okay not to know, right? But I think you got to get off your phones because folks spend so much time trying to emulate and check. Somebody was talking the other day about the impact of TikTok, and they were just saying, if you wanted to, now I don't want to be holier than thou because I have TikTok, even though that's hilarious, right? So I want to be clear, like I'm real too, I get it. But I was told that one of the reasons TikTok is so powerful is that if you were going to placate a generation, you would have them looking at dog videos and dance videos and whatever, all rather than using that time for something else, right? And so I'm not anti-social media. Please don't hear me say that. I mean, I got it too. Like, well, y'all boring me. I'm playing with it right now. I get it. But I'm just saying to you, put it down for a dedicated amount of time each day and explore the areas and interests that you have. Like we joke in the league when we talk about 25% of the NBA, there's 450 players in the league, a quarter, 110 of those young people are from countries outside of the US, right? And so I promise you, when people are thinking that the game is becoming more international, it absolutely is. There's a kid in like rural China right now where it's snowing with mittens on shooting free throws, right? Because that person has a dream to try to get into the league. And no matter what field you're interested in, law, medicine, technology, I don't care. There's somebody somewhere while you playing on your phone that's catching up, right? And I think, I don't say that to be panic stricken or like life is about competition, but I'm just saying it's magical thinking if you think you can be on your phone till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, get up late for school, groggy, you don't really wake up until noon, try to fake it till 2 and go home and do it again. Like I have young people in my life, I know what people are doing. My advice for you is put it in a compartment and get out and see the world, right? Be close to the things that you care about, explore, take risks. That little feeling in your stomach you get when you don't know or if you're lost or whatever, like that's okay, that's life. That means you're growing, as opposed to I'm trying to emulate what somebody else is doing because the new trend is this or that or whatever. So like, I don't mean to be an old curmudgeon, but I'm just saying straight up, like you got to put down the phones. It is amazing. Like I live in New York City, and maybe some of you on the phone, like I'm amazed when people are traveling to the trains and walking down the streets that they're on their phones all the time. It's unbelievable. Like we have to find some balance. I think it's really damaging your generation in terms of the work.
Yeah.
So that'd be my advice. Don't turn it off, but curtail it.
Yeah, those phones can definitely be a little addictive.
No question.
Okay, so now I want to open and invite some questions from our students. So before you ask your question, please tell us your name, your city, and the high school you attend. Okay, so first we're going to have Corey Tran. Everyone, let's welcome Corey.
Do I get to see Corey? How do we do this? Go for it, Corey. I don't know where you are. Hold on. If I change my view, right? Here we go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
All right. Hello, my name is Corey Tran. I am currently a senior attending Paint Branch High School in Burtonsville, Maryland. And my question is, what about your mindset sets you apart from other businessmen and businesswomen?
So in my current work, I see both Lauren and Adela on my staff on the phone, on the Zoom call. The three of us are really charged with creating the NBA Foundation, first ever foundation. We're a year old at the first ever foundation at the NBA, a year old. And the express mission is about economic opportunity for Black youth. Recognize there's lots of challenges and limited resources in lots of different communities, but we're growing out of the kind of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor issue a couple of summers ago. And what is it that the league can do around Black youth? I think the mindset question that I would say in that moment of leadership was to be unapologetically focused on that population and the resources that they need, that young, in this case, Black youth need. And daily, I'm being asked to broaden our focus. And again, I want to be clear, this isn't to suggest that there isn't need in other communities, right? And it isn't to suggest that people of color and those broader categories don't have the same challenges. It is to say that there is a unique experience that Black youth face. And if we aren't clear about that, then we broaden and dilute strategy. And so one of the real mindsets in my world, Corey, was being kind of focused on that. Both my lived experience, the groups I've worked with like Urban Alliance when I was your age, me being in my leadership positions and the like, I've been really consistent around that. I think is one. And then the only thing I would just say is I believe that my legacy is defined by the other people on my teams that I've had the privilege of working with in ways that I've measurably moved their career aspirations forward. I take mentorship very, very, very seriously. And so my mindset is this is not about Greg and what I can get out of it. It's about how many folk I can get over the starting line in terms of what their dreams and goals are. I don't think all leaders have that mindset. I certainly hold it as near and dear to who I am and what I believe in. Great question. Thank you for your leadership, man. I appreciate that. Straight up.
Thank you. Great answer.
All right, that was a really good question. Okay, next I want to invite Jacob Epps. Please introduce yourself, where you're based, and the school you attend.
Good afternoon, Mr. Taylor. I hope you're having a far. I go to Intrinsic. I'm currently a senior in Chicago, Illinois. So my question for you today is, when you take these leadership roles, how do you make inclusion for other people or coworkers to become leaders as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it grows out of the previous question. I mean, I think in many ways, I hire killers. I hire really talented folk. And I think in many ways, my job is to block and tackle for them to be successful. I think if you look at a strand or a thread throughout my career, I've been very clear about that. And so, I have folk who are leading massive bodies of our work who, because they are competent and able to do it, we give them a chance to do their thing. And I give them a chance to really do their thing. And so for me, I want to be able to remove barriers to their imagination. I want to make every day predictable to give them the credit, the opportunity to kind of grow and to excel and lead. I think I feel like because I know the kind of political waters and what it means to navigate corporate culture in this organization, I want to block and tackle for them to be successful. And I think, again, it's about getting more folk leading in terms of what we're ultimately trying to do. But I take that really seriously. I had an incredible colleague recently say to me, like, you want to love the work and not the emperor. And what he means by that is you want to dive into what it takes to do the work every day and recognize that that process matters. What happens in corporate culture oftentimes is you're worried about pleasing the boss, right? And what I'm suggesting to you is bosses come and go, but your process of how you do the work, who you are and how you show up every day is what it's about. And I try to make sure I open up those opportunities for the people I work with.
Yeah, that was a great answer. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you, man.
Okay.
Thanks for your leadership.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so let's take one final question from Nuri Hanan, and please introduce yourself, where you're based, and the school you attend.
Hi, can you hear me?
Now I can. I don't see you yet, though, but keep going. Go for it.
Okay. Hi, Mr. Taylor. It's such a pleasure meeting you. My name is Nuri Hanan. I attend Detroit International Academy for Young Women located in Detroit. My question for you today is, I know you've worked with youth, but what changes or observations have you made among working with them during the pandemic?
Wow. I was with you until you hit me with the during the pandemic. I think the reality is day in and day out, I don't work with as many young people as I would like to be honest. I think what we're doing at the foundation is investing in organizations like Urban Alliance in each of our 28 markets. So each of our basketball teams are located in 28 cities across the country. And there's lots of organizations like Urban Alliance in those communities. And what we're trying to do is to make sure their missions are clear, their leadership is strong, and that they're working with Black young people around economic opportunity, education, and others. And we're pouring our resources in to strengthen those organizations. That's the way indirectly that I'm working with young people. One of the reasons I was excited to do this today, I think folks opened up. So I've known Urban Alliance since its inception. I remember there's, the founders are two folk, Andrew Plepler and Mary Zients and others who founded the organization way back in the late 80s or maybe early 90s. And they said they did it because there was an incredibly inspiring young man named Charles Reed, who was the very first young person in Urban Alliance. I happen to just know, because I was in DC at the time, founded Anacostia High School. Like, I get the origin of this organization. It's both that and also that I got a chance to hang out with some young people. It just feeds my soul. Like, I'm hopeful for all of you all, really. And I think in many ways, this kind of conversation, as I keep saying, you all showing up, like, you didn't know how the day was going to go. Maybe I have been boring, but the reality is, like, this could have been a boring time, but you came thirsty to learn something different, to apply to who you want to be and where you want to go. And somehow this organization is helping to undergird that. That's what this is all about. And so for me, like, this whole notion about engaging young people, I wish I did it more on a day-to-day basis. I feel like because we're growing the urban alliances of the world, of the country, across the country. Like, I feel like I'm getting the young people, but I don't spend time each and every day as I used to. During the pandemic, I know it's been isolating. I know it's about a loss of community. I know it's like the intangible things where you show up at the Herbo office and like, just because there's 20 of y'all there, like the fun, how we tell jokes and talk about our day. And I like this person, I don't like all of that behind the scenes. I know is really, really important. There's something flat about doing these type of programs, this type of through the screen. Prayerfully, we'll get through the pandemic. And it'll be about rebuilding community. I know when I didn't want to study, or I was, losing my motivation when I was your age, it was so helpful. Ours was called the Paul Robeson Leadership Circle at the organization I grew up, which was the Manhattan Valley Youth Program in New York City. When we went to the Robeson Circle, and it was 40 young people who looked like me, who were struggling with the same, just the beauty of the network got me through tough days. And I know it's isolating in the pandemic. I would suspect that's why, mental health and others are challenges that are maybe have always been, but are certainly more acute these days. And so, my hope is that, you all will be able to get back in community, both formal and informal time, catching the train and all this stuff you do to live your lives together. That's the part of the experience that I think is missing. And I feel like, that's the youth angle that I would miss if I were you all. I know the pandemic has been tough, but I would say hang in there, lean on each other, be real about what's happening. And when we get to a point where we're on the other side, get vaccinated. Sorry if they're anti-vaxxers, get vaccinated. But then on the other side, you should be straight in terms of really being clear about community and connecting.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for your leadership. I appreciate the question. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had some really good questions. All right.
Yeah, y'all killing it.
Okay, so now we're going to get into a little fun. So we're going to do the lightning round with Mr. Greg Taylor. Are you ready?
Apparently, let's go. Okay.
Okay, so what is the best book you've ever read?
I recently read The Alchemist. I put it at the top of the list. I think it applies to dreams and goals, and really important book, Alchemist.
Okay, one thing you can't live without.
Coffee.
Personal theme song or favorite song?
Before I Let Go, Frankie Beverly and Maze.
What is your favorite sneaker?
The Jordan 1 Retro Shadow, basically.
Okay.
I know that's very specific, but it's yes, it's my shoe.
Last TV series you binged?
Oh boy, I just got through Raising Kenan. Was that the Power one? I just finished that.
Oh, Raising Kenan.
Is it what's the one about 50 Cent growing up? Whatever that one is. I just got through that.
Raising Canaan.
There we go. Thank you. You shouldn't be watching that. It's a violent show. No, I'm kidding. Raising Canaan. Yes, my last one. Thank you.
Okay. Favorite part of the day?
Morning.
Favorite movie of all time?
Love Jones.
Who's your personal hero?
My mother.
Oh. Favorite place to travel?
Anything in the Caribbean.
Phone app you use the most?
Yo, Facebook. Don't laugh, y'all. I'm older than you are. Facebook.
Okay, well, that has concluded our lightning round. Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor.
That was easy. Okay. I only saw the page with the. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you. That's awesome.
This has been a fantastic conversation. If you can give a round of applause, either use your reaction or just simply clap on screen. All right.
Appreciate your time, you guys.
Yeah, I will now send it back to Taylor Made for a few closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Kayla, for your amazing moderation. This has been a great discussion. I'm deeply proud of you. Let's give Kayla some praise in the chat as well. And then just like Kayla said, let's also make sure we give our guest, Greg Taylor, a hand using that audience applause emoji. Thank you for all your insight and your wisdom that you gave to all our interns and our staff here today. I also encourage you to continue the conversation about today, whether it be at Friday workshop with your program coordinators, with your mentors and those you know around you, really to continue this conversation. I want to thank you all for our students for participating. And also to our CEO, Elizabeth Lindsley, and all of our guests who joined us today. Just a few reminders. This recording for this Leaders Like Me speaker series will be posted on our Urban Alliance YouTube channel later this evening. I encourage our students to remind your peers, your classmates who are rising seniors to apply now for the high school internship program in your region. The recruitment period is open and the application deadline is on our website at theurbanalliance.org. But don't go just yet. If everyone could please stay on camera for a few more minutes because we're gonna take 3 quick photos, okay? So on the count of 3, and I'll count slowly, you're just gonna smile after that and just hold it for just a little bit. All right. 1, 2, 3. All right, that's the first one. Here's the second one. 1, 2, 3. All right, last picture. 1, 2, 3. Thank you all, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Greg.